How's it going, guys? It's Aubrey from West One Shop 1000. Today is June 29th, 2020, and we only have one disturbance we will be looking at in the Atlantic, as of right now at least, that has a chance to develop as this disturbance just off the coast of the Caribbean islands has pretty much a 0% chance of formation. And we're going to also talk about this disturbance, which has a 10% chance of developing, and what could happen beyond 5 days, beyond what the National Hurricane Center is currently forecasting. But before I start, make sure to subscribe for more content, for more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to share with friends and family who are interested. So let's first look at disturbance number 1, which obviously now has a 0% chance of formation, which is pretty much impossible at that point. And it had 10% chance of formation yesterday. While it was still low, there was still a slight chance, but now it seemed like this disturbance missed its chance to develop. And it's pretty obvious why if we look at the water vapor, because I would say the disturbance at this point is probably right around this area, and there's just going to be too much shear for this to develop and create a focused core and in a circular area of rotation around the center of circulation. Because if you take a look at the clouds and the water vapor, you see a lot of the water vapor and the cloud tops are generally moving towards this direction, and they're pretty much getting dragged into this direction. And when you see an area where areas of clouds or water vapor are moving towards an area quite faster than what you would typically see in surrounding areas, quite fast towards one direction, there's likely a lot of wind shear when the water vapor imagery is showing that. And you could see that these clouds over here, these areas of water vapor are moving quite fast into this upper level low that's currently circulating around the middle of the Atlantic as of right now. And it's also getting strengthened by a little bit of a ridge it's located right around this area, and that's like strengthening the vertical wind shear for this to pretty much have no chance of developing. Also, the air is a little bit too dry. You see the darker blacks, which represent the drier than usual conditions, which makes it very unfavorable for tropical cyclone development, to the point where the National Hurricane Center is giving this a 0% chance of formation. And if you take a look at the computer models, it doesn't seem to have a future beyond 5 days. So if we take a look at the GFSs as of right now, I would say the disturbance is right here, and it's so weak that the GFS doesn't even list it as anything, or the map doesn't even show any sort of area of low pressure. Maybe I can't really find any area where I could really say with confidence that's a low pressure system, as I expect these areas of thunderstorms to get absorbed by the wind shear and pretty much circulate around the upper level low that's currently located over the middle of the Atlantic. So nothing to worry about with this disturbance over here. Now let's move on to disturbance number 2, which also has a very low percent chance of developing, only a 10% chance over the next 2 days, and a 10% chance over the next 5 days. And as of right now, the disturbance isn't over water yet, and it currently has no chance of developing as of right now, since it's obviously over land. It's not until it gets over water where it might have a slight chance of developing, but even then the chances are very, very slim. And I think the main reason why is that there's going to be strong upper level winds that are going to be affecting that area, since we're seeing a little bit of a trough dip down through the northeast right now, and it's bringing not only stronger than usual wind shear, but also quite a lot of dry air behind it. And I expect if this does form, it's likely going to form into a subtropical storm, because I expect this storm, if it does strengthen, it's going to strengthen through a good amount through broncholic influences, which I mean instability with contrasts between warmer air from the Gulf Stream and colder air from northeast. As I expect it to be sort of a hybrid of an extratropical cyclone and a tropical cyclone, since it's going to deal with a little bit of instability that it could work with to strengthen it, if it does strengthen, which it seems slim at this point. Because if we take a look at the future right now, this is as of right now, and you see those strong upper level winds. This is based off of the GFS forecast, and you see the strong upper level winds are pretty much completely swallowing up the northeast coast and the mid-Atlantic states and all throughout this area, which makes it very unfavorable for development. And if we move forward, that wind shear continues into Wednesday and Thursday, and we might see a little bit of low pressure system form, and we might see this storm actually get some momentum from the instability that this dip in the jet stream will bring over in the northeast, that cooler air mixing in with the warmer air above the Gulf Stream water. However, the strong wind shear and the likely dry air in this region, let me show you the relative humidity map for the GFS and what it's forecasting when it comes to humidity, because obviously humidity and moist air is very important for hurricane development, since moist air has a lot more energy, the air molecules move around, and it's able to hold more water as a result of that. And you can see the abundance of dry air is just going to filter in through the Atlantic. There is definitely areas of more moist air as well, but usually for tropical cyclones to strengthen completely and to strengthen, it needs very little to almost no dry air, because if it's in the early stages of development where it's not even a tropical disturbance or tropical storm yet, any little dry air will completely kill it off or kill its chances of developing into a tropical storm, since it's already so weak. And there's just going to be enough dry air where it seems unlikely that this will develop into a tropical storm. Maybe this dry air could be a little bit less, which may increase the chances. Let's take a look at the European and see what it states in terms of relative humidity. And there isn't a relative humidity map, so I guess we'll just go with the vorticity signatures of the European model. And there's some vorticity off the coast of North Carolina, but I think about 48. This should be the storm, maybe. I don't know. There's just so much different vorticity signatures just off the coast as a result of this trough, where it's really hard to define where this tropical cyclone or tropical disturbance will form at, because there's just a lot of vorticity all throughout. And I think the National Hurricane Center is only giving this a slight chance of development because there's just going to be a lot of vorticity potentially over Gulf Stream water, which may give it a slight chance of formation. But again, the factors such as the dry air and the higher than usual wind shear over the northeast will pretty much make the chances very slim. However, if this does develop, what are the impacts expected for the mid-Atlantic through the northeast? Maybe stronger than usual swells over this region. It's already likely that we're going to see enhanced rainfall as a result of this dip in the jet stream, which will definitely induce a lot of convection in this area, since that dip in the jet stream will bring a lot of cold air over the already warm Gulf Stream water and the warm and mix in with some of the warm air towards the south, which will definitely bring some instability. However, but if it strengthens, the main thing will be maybe a higher risk of rip currents, but even then it won't be major because it's going to be too weak and just a little bit too far offshore to have any major impacts. However, still has a 10% chance of formation, so definitely keep that in mind. And don't underestimate rip currents as well, because rip currents are some of the most preventable causes of death when it comes to weather in the United States. And it's up, and a lot more people die from rip currents than they should, and it's easily preventable. So do not underestimate rip currents. If this disturbance does bring some rip currents, if this strengthens, but it's unlikely that it'll develop. But outside of these two disturbances, which potentially had a chance of forming, besides those two, there really isn't anything that has a chance to develop over the next 5 days, according to the National Hurricane Center. But there is a disturbance that may have a chance. Well, I won't say it may have a chance as of right now, because it's still too far to really definitively say it'll have a chance. But there's definitely going to be a disturbance and an area of low pressure to watch, mainly through the southeast, where both the European and the GFS as of right now are taking a stronger than usual vorticity over the southeast. I'm talking about the panhandle of Florida, Georgia, and throughout Alabama. It seems like the European and GFS computer models are leaning towards developing an area of strong vorticity and an area of lower pressure over this area, which potentially could develop into something beyond 5 days from now. If we take a look, if we go 5 days from now, if we go even 4 days from now, you see just a slight amount of vorticity over Georgia beginning to form, and we see a little bit of vorticity throughout Louisiana and Texas. And what's interesting about this vorticity over Georgia is that it's circular, and when it's circular, that means that it's more that the low pressure is likely stronger, since all the energy is focused towards the center of circulation, and it's pretty much rotating around the low pressure system. So when we see vorticity that's round, that means it could potentially be stronger. And then if we go 5 days from now, I usually don't like to go beyond 5 days, because that's when when the forecast definitely gets a little bit, it gets a lot more uncertain. But if we take a look 5 days from now, which is definitely forecast, it's definitely within our forecast range to forecast something within 5 days from now. And you could see that we see vorticity signature just off the coast of Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. And if we extend a little bit 5 days, I know I just said I won't go a little bit more than 5 days, but it's definitely interesting, because if we go 6 days from now, the European is definitely forming some sort of energy off the coast of the southeast. Thankfully, it's going out to sea. It looks like this might affect Bermuda if this does form, which is definitely very uncertain. I'm going to keep repeating that in this video, because I don't want people to make assumptions that I'm saying that this will definitely form or has a chance of forming, because it's still too far to really say it has any sort of chance of forming. And the National Hurricane Center only forecasts a chance of formation 5 days out for a reason, since beyond 5 days it gets very, very difficult to forecast. However, the GFS is taking definitely something a lot more stronger vorticity over Georgia and just north of Florida. And this almost 6 days from now, 5 to 6 days from now, if we move forward, that vorticity continues to move, and then we see a little bit of a strong storm form off the coast of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. And this track is definitely more worrying, because not only is this low pressure would be stronger, but it'll be far closer to land to where it could make landfall. And GFS right now is stating that likely a tropical storm will form just off the coast of the southeast. However, it's far from certain, since we're going beyond 5 days out. However, if we go within the forecast range of 5 days out, we see vorticity forming around Georgia, which is coinciding with the European forecast, which also puts a decent amount of energy over Georgia and over the southeast. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, because if this energy, it's likely that this energy will move out to sea. But if this energy moves out to sea and is located over an area of favorable conditions, which could be possible, then we may see a gradual strengthening of this into a tropical storm, and it'll affect areas just off the coast of the southeast. So that's definitely something to watch. And even if this does develop into a weak tropical storm, it still could dump a lot of rain over the southeast, and that's not good news since a lot of the southeast is already well above the average in terms of rainfall, and adding more rainfall would only add insult to injury to a lot of those rivers, which are far more prone to flooding due to the higher than average rainfall. So definitely something to watch over the next several days. If we let's take a look at the 200 millibar wind forecast to see what factors could change that could affect if that could determine whether the storm forms or not. And you could see that throughout most of the Atlantic, we're seeing a lot of wind shear throughout the even United States even. And it seems like it's gonna, however, the GFS is still leaning towards strengthening it. And I think the reason why is because in this area, the wind shear isn't that strong. While we do see areas of stronger wind shear, especially just to the north and east of it, you can see that it's in a fairly favorable area for conditions in terms of strengthening. Since the wind shear isn't all that strong, we see a little bit of a ridge form in this area, and that should steer the upper level winds towards coming from the south and west, which will coincide with what the trade winds will usually the track that trade winds usually take over the southeast, where the trade winds usually move like this, and then they get steered by the Bermuda High into a more southwesterly direction, and that's quite common in the southeast. And since this ridge will likely create it's possible that this ridge will create an area of southwest winds to where it'll benefit the hurricane, since it's going to coincide with the trade winds, and there won't be change of wind direction within height, which is exactly what wind shear is defined as. And if we move forward, you see that the wind shear definitely lightens down as we see the ridge move a little bit faster than this low pressure system off the coast, and it's in a fairly open area to develop, and that's worrying because that definitely could strengthen it. So the key is that it depends how fast this trough moves, because if it moves a little bit let's say it moves a little bit slower, or maybe it dips down slightly more, then it's unlikely that it'll develop, because it'll get absorbed by this trough that's moving through the east coast of the US. However, if this moves even a little faster than usual, this might give this storm a little bit of an open lane to develop just off the coast of the southeast. So we're definitely going to keep track of that over the next several days, because it's definitely going to be interesting to watch what happens with this trough and how this develops, as it all depends on the speed of this trough. And we're definitely gonna have to watch that over the next several days, as pretty much a cold front will dip down, give some energy in the southeast, and then it might slow down as a result of this ridge, and then might have a chance to strengthen. So definitely keep that in mind over the next several days, as that's definitely important to watch out for. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more content, and make sure to like if you like this video, and I hope you guys have a good day and a good night.